Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, your week in IndyCar listener Q&A. Apologies for being a little late on getting this together, y'all. Got home late Monday night. I was going to say wiped out Tuesday. That's a bit of redundancy because everybody involved in the Indy 500 is wiped out for the week following, fans included. Nonetheless, here taking some time to read through the great questions you sent in, processed by our friend Jerry Siddeth. Jerry, fantastic to see you at Indy, as well as so many of you, so many listeners who are just so kind to say hello. Also to our Pruitt listener group. It was really fun making the night before the race meetup. Allie, Alyssa Rucklick, she and her family hosting us yet again. So thanks again to so many for making me so welcome at Indianapolis yet again. Bit of a strange thing, compressed event for me. 2 weeks being compressed into one with some of the things going on the home front, but fantastic to get home. So we've got a lot of questions. Going to try and get through those here in just one moment. Before we do that, let's say a big thank you to everyone who makes this show possible. Time to say a big thank you to our show partners on the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, starting with Pfaff Technologies, build-to-print composites manufacturing company. They're specializing in medium to large-scale automotive, motorsports, and military applications. Visit PfaffTechnologies.com. It's P-F-A-F-F Technologies.com to learn more about their services and how they can benefit your business. Next, it's the Justice Brothers, makers of premium additives, lubricants, and cleaners, been servicing the automotive and motorsports industries for more than 85 years. With victories in all of the biggest North American motor races, including the Indianapolis 500, the 24 Hours of Daytona, the Justice Brothers products are truly race-proven. Learn about their vast history and range of offerings at justicebrothers.com. If you're fond of awesome motor racing collectibles, including Pfaff Motorsports McLaren gear and goodies, pay a visit to torontomotorsports.com. And finally, we have a new online merchandise home for the podcast, thepruittstore.com. For all the show stickers, models, racing memorabilia I'm trying to sell and put towards our fund to buy a house is now live and rocking. Thepruittstore.com. A little bit of driver news here in the last 24 hours. This morning, Wednesday morning, we had Tristan Vautier confirmed at Dale Coyne Racing, which I just love. Tristan, one of the kindest, most talented, sweetest people you will ever meet. He's always there, always around, whether it's IndyCar races, sports car races. He's often driving in sports car events, but even when he's not, he's there talking with folks, coaching, doing whatever he can, searching for opportunities. Same in IndyCar, and just so great to see that he'll be back in IndyCar for the first time since about the middle of 2017, almost 7 years to the day. So really happy to have him back. We had confirmation here a little over an hour ago that Tom Blomqvist's time in the number 66 Meyer-Shank Racing Honda has come to an end, at least for now. When he had his solo crash on Sunday, I will admit that I had a little thing in the back of my head say, I wonder if that is the official pause button that's going to be hit on Tom's proper rookie season with the Meyer-Shank Racing team. They love him. He's going nowhere. He will be part of the team for years to come. Will it be an IndyCar? We don't know. We know that after a very rough start to the season, I believe he's sitting something like close to next to last. Yeah, he is effectively one spot ahead, but, well, however you want to call it, he is tied for last place among full-time drivers with Stingray Robb. And there are a couple of drivers behind them. Callum Ilott, he's done 3 events. Theo Pourchaire, who's done 3 events. But if you look at those who have indeed done all the races, Tom is effectively dead last. Hasn't been a terrible season from start to finish. He did kick off 15th at St. Petersburg, which was mighty fine. Things took a backward step for sure at Long Beach, 22nd place. 19th at Barber, which again was not terrible, just nothing to really say, okay, getting a hang for things. Then it was 23rd at the Indy GP, another not particularly great performance. So those were all finishes, mind you, right? I'm not saying the team made zero mistakes, but I am telling you that Tom was brought over from Meyershank Racing's sports car program, which ended following the 2023 season, their IMSA GTP program. Tom was brought over, hired to be full-time in the second car with the strong belief, but it was a experiment, strong belief that guy who was extremely good in junior open wheel, who turned his career towards sports cars, became a champion for Shank in 2022 in IMSA in the DPI class, that he could translate all of that to being a badass in open wheel in IndyCar. And could he be that guy given more time? Possibly. For the sample size of what we've seen from St. Pete, Thermal Club, Long Beach, Barber, Indy GP, Indy 500, there was nothing that jumped out to say something much better is right around the corner. It's a aggressive approach by Meyershank Racing. One that it felt like we were edging towards coming out of Barber. I don't know if we want to say a short leash was being kept on Tom, but I can tell you that there was nothing that jumped out to say this hope that Mike Shank and Jim Meyer had was going to be realized either at all or anytime soon, and knowing the immediacy of needs from sponsors in particular for strong results to happen right away at all times, as frequently as possible. This is where things just started to look a little bit unstable for Tom in recent weeks. So for what the team's announced, they've said part owner, Indy 500 winner for them, the super famous, amazing Elio Castroneves will be in the car this weekend at Detroit, and next weekend, the weekend after that, at Road America. Elio, I'm sure, will do more races if asked. Is he wanting to come back and be full-time? He'd probably say yes, but he's made some adjustments in life, has other things that he's doing as well, to where I don't know if jumping back in for the rest of the season makes total sense. I'm not expecting that. Would mean what happens after Road America. We go to Monterey, then we go to Mid-Ohio. Then we do a doubleheader at Iowa, Toronto Gateway Oval, Portland doubleheader at Milwaukee, close on Nashville Oval. Couple drivers out there they could consider. Callum Ilott comes to mind, right? He's probably the best ready-to-go person they could try and acquire. His schedule gets pretty busy here for the rest of the season. There are a number of conflicts with his primary job in the FIWEC, driving for Team Hertz Jota, where he won the most recent race, sitting second in the championship. I know we love having Callum in IndyCar, but it ain't happening in terms of come on over and drive the car for the rest of the year and forget your European sports car obligations. In fact, in a story coming tomorrow probably, Callum's having a crazy amount of interest for his services for next year, and the biggest, most impressive ones I hear about are from WEC hypercar factories. That means big money, multi-year, lots of stability. No way any driver being courted by big factories would throw all that away just to go and substitute for however many IndyCar races coming up for the rest of the year. So could we see him in a car? Yes. Rest of the season in that number 66 Meyershank Racing Acura? Honda? No, not a chance. Where do you go from there? Connor Daly obviously jumps out, sub for them last year. We know Jack Harvey is available for a couple of rounds, one or two more, maybe, I forget. Knowing that he's got to step aside again, I believe at least once more for Nolan Siegel. Run down the list. There's some other names for sure. Nolan Siegel jumps out, but they're trying to preserve his rookie status for next year, so he doesn't want to do more than 4 races. Colin Brown be an option. Ryan Hunter-Ray. There's a number of names that jump out. Admittedly, the one, just to close on this and get into your Q&A, the one that stands out the most for me, if he is healed, is David Malukas. Would Davey be my first choice for the upcoming road and street course races after Road America? I don't know about that. But I do know that while he's trying to regain strength in his hand and wrist, if he is cleared to drive, that he is a ball of awesomeness on the upcoming ovals. I realize that we're going to 2 ovals that he's never been to before in Milwaukee and Nashville, but this kid on ovals is something special. Half of the races that are left to run are indeed on ovals. If it's not Elio, who's obviously pretty darn good on ovals, and if he is cleared, Davey Malukas, this would tick a lot of boxes. One thing I discussed with him, he asked when we were at Indy, what do you think I should do? Should I push to try and get into someone's car before the end of the season, or should I just wait and try and see what I can find for full-time next year? Should that be my major goal? Aim for just getting back in 25. And I said, hell no, Davey. If you're not in a car by the end of the season, you will be forgotten. I hate to say it, man, but your name, I'm not saying no one will think of it, but in terms of great opportunities, you are by no means going to be at the top of the list, because if nobody has seen that you're back and good and healthy and can do the things you did last year, that's going to be a giant question mark hanging over you that nobody is really going to want to spend their own money to find out if you're still good to go. Got to get back in a car this year and show it yourself. Could this be, if Tom doesn't get back in the car, if Elio doesn't continue in it, could this be the perfect storm for Malukas to show that he's good and attract some real interest, whether it's from Shank or whomever else? It could be, but I don't know anything for a fact relating to Tom, who I love and really hope this was going to work out for. I don't know anything in terms of being factual about him never driving that car again in IndyCar, but I can just tell you from experience, it would be really strange to see him climb back in. When you get benched, and you're getting benched off of, by and large, a bunch of lows instead of highs, rarely do you get your place back that you once had. Can also tell you that confidence-wise, I don't know if I saw a ton of that in Tom's eyes in the way that I had hoped. So, would need to speak to him to get a better feeling on this, but there's part of me that also thinks this might be something where Tom actually is a little bit relieved. It's not that he couldn't be a fantastic IndyCar driver, just with the time and expectations and everything placed upon him, the circumstances didn't provide that inkling that, yes, there is something great waiting for us if we just push through this rough patch. This guy can go win championships for Shank and Meyer in IMSA and have a ongoing and wonderful career there. And we'll see if he gets back in the car. But again, it would be a real surprise. Okay, let's get going with your Q&A, all put together by our friend Jerry Suddeth. And where do we start things off? And I'm going to try and roll through these as quickly as I can. Craig Yerish says, was at the race. What an epic day. How would you rate it among all the Indy 500s you've seen? Oh, it's top 5 for sure. Maybe even top 3. We can go back and these might be races that happened before you were alive, whomever, but you can go back on YouTube and say, what a thrilling finish, the 1992 Indy 500, the last lap, and Little Al beating Scott Goodyear by a fraction of an inch and that kind of stuff. And there are some amazing Indy 500s we can go and look at where this last lap thing happened, or there was a thrilling duel for however many laps here or there. What makes this 108th running of the Indy 500 so unique for me, Craig, is not the individual thing that happened for a couple of laps that we will remember forever. It's the, holy cow, they lost their minds from the first lap to the last lap. I mean, there were a couple of stretches that weren't super animated, but I would put this maybe in the top 3 I have ever seen, whether it is live for the last 25, 30 years or watched as a kid, gone back and viewed, for the fact that from the beginning to the end, this thing was crazy. The restarts were intense. Everything was in pit lane. I don't know if I've ever seen worse driving behavior on pit lane throughout an entire Indy 500 than we did. People on the grass multiple times, people hitting one another, front, side, back, you name it. Crashes galore. Luckily, everyone is healthy, but it was exhausting, as I mentioned in the opening of the show. And just from watching, it was one of those races that we so rarely get where you don't want to take a bathroom break. You don't want to go make a sandwich. You don't want to look away because it feels like you've just seen 50 crazy things and there's got to be a 51st and a 73rd and a 119th, and I lost track. So yeah, for that, definite top 3 that I've ever seen. Jake Whetstone. Doing, Jake? Says, glad you made it to IMS, and continued thoughts and prayers for you and your wife and the cats. Thank you, Jake. Says, do you think Newgarden's win silences the critics, or does a win this soon after the controversy only fan the flames for those who might think Penske may be up to something nefarious by owning the team, the track, and the series? I can only give you my take on this, and I realize that's what you're asking for, but as for silencing critics and such, did I love the fact that 2-3 days after however many days after the Long Beach race, disqualifications, penalties, and all that rigmarole, I think that's the first time I've used that word in the podcast, that just days later, Team Penske won the next race, that being with Scott McLaughlin? Did I love that? No, not really. Just, if you're getting caught for cheating, winning right away just feels a little... I know that sentiment was expressed to me by more than a few people after Joseph's win at the Indy 500, that this one might be under a little bit of a dark cloud. I can just tell you this. The guy is the best of his generation. I've said it many times before. I'll keep saying it. Of those who are kind of his class, meaning graduation class coming out of Indy Lights, coming over from wherever else, those who are of his same approximate age, best. He's the best there is. Has been. It was before he won his first Indy 500. Definitely after he got that first, and definitely after he's gotten the second. Big boos were heard, right? He was booed after winning the pit stop competition. I had friends and fans who sat throughout the place who told me about when he ended up crossing the finish line, getting that second win, that the boos were loud. I don't know if they were louder than the cheers, but I think the serious fans' feeling of right and wrong has been correctly monkeyed with a bit, right? Spidey sense tingling a little bit about, okay. I don't know if I love the way things feel about how things went down with the scandal, team's behavior, Joseph's words and behavior. I know this maybe isn't the exact thing you're asking about, Jake. I'll just share it. There was one journalist that I recall, I think might have been the only one, from Mexico, I believe, in the post-race press conference, who asked Joseph, I don't remember the exact setup, but it was, what did he learn coming through the scandal and so on and so forth. And to my knowledge, again, I believe was the only reporter to ask about the win at Indy in relation to the cheating scandal and so on. And paraphrasing, but my takeaway from it is Joseph said basically, no, but I did learn a lot externally, right, about how certain people reacted or behaved or whatever. And it was, if we were talking WWE, like, Joseph has some real heel sensibilities within him. The thing to say that would have maybe put things to rest probably wouldn't have been authentic coming from him. I understand that, but if he'd said, it was a tough time for everybody, definitely a lot of time for introspection. What I learned, I want to keep that to myself. Those are lessons for me to use in the future. But yes, definitely learned from that and feel like, maybe we can now turn the page. Instead, what he did was use the question to basically cast an indictment on others, saying, again, paraphrasing, how interesting it was to learn and see how folks reacted to him and them in light of this. It was very much of I'm keeping a scorecard of who said what or acted in whichever way. And it's his right? It's his world, say whatever he wants. Just saying, there was one way to kind of maybe turn the page formally and put that to rest. At least as I perceived things, this was a little bit of I'm watching and listening. I know who said what, whatever. And I'm like, okay, good. Definite heel sensibilities, Jake. So if you forget the whole Penske cheating thing, the team was the class of the Indy 500. There's some questions coming up about how and whatnot. I'll get into some of the reasons why a little bit more in just a moment. These are real things. These are not opinions. These are facts. I know them to be facts. They were the best at the Indy 500. I feel really confident in saying their cars going through technical inspection after the race, in particular Joseph's, probably went through the most strict inspection you could imagine. Because the last thing IndyCar's tech inspectors want to have is any question as to whether they took it easy because of who owns the team and the series and the whatever else. I have no doubt about the quality of the inspectors that work under Kevin Blanche, technical inspector, who works beneath Jay Fry, IndyCar Series president. We have not heard a single thing about any of the Penske cars being out of compliance, so I have no reason to believe that they were. So with all that said, yeah, I think the team, Joseph in particular, if they care, might have some image rehabilitation to do, but we also just crowned a 2-time Indy 500 winner, and that to me is really important. And that deserves a lot of respect. And what they achieved with a stand-in race engineer and a stand-in race strategist, this was something that was truly phenomenal. Stephen Lake says, you may have answered this already. 30 years ago, the words Penske pushrod referred to the beastly Mercedes engine that pushed Al Unser Jr. to his second victory in 1994. This year, it's suspension and damper related. Any insights on the unfair advantage Team Penske found? Okay. I'll try not to go too technical on this. Okay. Will Power, our dear friend William Power, got into a topic without really explaining it on, I think, a Peacock broadcast and then in press conference, at least one, if not more, talking about aerodynamic advantages and push rods. What our guy from Down Under was referring to, the suspension push rods. Those being the suspension pieces that sit at about a, 45-degree angle that go from the bottom of the wheel on all four corners and connect to the car. And they connect to rocker arms, which push down and against the shocks, the springs, and that's how the car is suspended. Well, those push rods sit out in the airstream, obviously, open wheel car. And here's what Will was referring to. There was no unfair advantage that Team Penske found. What happened, this is through the tech transfer that took place between AJ Foyt Racing and Team Penske in their technical alliance. This happened, I was told, late last summer. I forget which. I think it might have been Iowa. I forget which oval. The linkage here is former championship-winning, two-time pole-winning race engineer to Scott Dixon, Michael Cannon, dear old friend at Chip Ganassi Racing, left the team, went to work for AJ Foyt Racing. Michael, very, very good at the Indy 500 as a race engineer. Bit of a savant like that. Can also say that Chip Ganassi Racing from 2021 when they were on pole with Dixie. Dixie was a beast that year. Could have easily won the race. On pole again with Dixie in 2022. Marcus Ericsson with Ganassi ended up winning the race. Even last year, although Michael was gone at Foyt, Ganassi on the pole again with Palou. Palou could have won 22, 23 in 2022 and 2023 as well. I realized Joseph and Penske won last year, but for me, the Ganassi team from 21 through 23 was really the dominant team. It's well known within the paddock that you can't make knowledge fall out of someone's brain. Can also say that it's not uncommon, although it's fairly frowned upon, when an engineer, a driver, whomever leaves a team and goes to another. You're really not supposed to take that knowledge with you and share it. I'm not saying you can make it fall out of your brain, but historically, over years, decades, you name it, it's not uncommon for a person to leave a team with a book full of chassis setups or a hard drive or a thumb drive or something. Again, depending on the era, information gets traded around to teams quite a bit. It's not supposed to happen, especially modern era. There's a lot of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs that get signed that forbid folks from doing such things, but it does happen. It's common knowledge, alleged knowledge, that in the technical relationship that was struck last summer between Foyt and Penske, where Penske started providing dampers and setup information to the Foyt team, that the thing they allegedly wanted in return was a look into what made Ganassi so special and so hard to beat at Indy. Allegedly, that, quote, playbook was shared. If you were to look at the year-to-year spike in competitiveness for Team Penske, in qualifying in particular, locked out the front row. Qualifying had been a little bit of a weak area for them in recent years. But overall, the team looked unlike anything we have seen from Team Penske at Indy in a number of years. They show up this year and own the place from start to finish. One of the items that we're talking about here, it's part of that playbook, which some teams were doing. I did not know about this beforehand. I learned about this at the same time y'all did. Push rods. So, back in 2012, when the current chassis, the Dallara DW12, was introduced, normal car, made really good downforce, but just normal car went and was used and raced as it was. In 2015, they're talking about it for a few years. IndyCar and its auto manufacturers said, okay, we're going to introduce manufacturer aero kits. And they did that. And those aero kits made ungodly downforce. And what they saw in testing, Team Penske was one of the teams that flagged this, I believe at Iowa, with unheralded levels of downforce now being poured onto the car. They were seeing push rods starting to bend. And just insane, right? So we have push rods being bent by downforce. And so what happened? Dallara came up with, and I think some teams might have maybe done some fixing on their own, but the response to this was to make bigger and beefier push rods. Those were used throughout the manufacturer aero kit era, which ran through 2017. The UAK 18, Universal Aero Kit 18, what we use today, came online in 2018. At that point, the beefier push rods had just been the norm throughout the entire paddock for many years and just continued to be used, even though the cars weren't making as much crushing downforce. I don't know the exact year, but I do know that Chip Ganassi Racing was one of the teams to say, well, at Indy, where reducing the size of anything in the airstream is going to help the cars make more speed, go faster, improve our competitiveness. If we no longer need these, and we're not talking giant push rods by comparison to the old ones, but again, big enough or bigger enough, what if we were to go back to the 2012 ones, right? Those were never outlawed. They are a little bit sleeker through the air. We're not concerned about the downforce bending them. Maybe this becomes a part of our Indy 500 playbook of how we get around there so quickly. I am told some other teams were doing this as well. I'm also told, again, this is an alleged thing, but I'm told that we're not sure how many 2012 push rods were still in existence. There's certainly a belief among many teams that some of those who were using the 2012 era slimmer push rods might have been manufacturing new ones. And, it's not hard to, folks know how to age things and make them look a little bit older, but that had become a standard practice by those who were thought of it and those who caught on to it. Team Penske was not one of those teams, I'm told. Well, this was banned coming into 2024. Now, why was this randomly banned? I don't know. Again, information comes to light about how one team is doing things, or the team that's doing the best at Indy is doing things. Is that information that filters around and gets to a point to where that's banned? I don't know. But I can tell you this. From some estimations I've heard, our guy Willpower might have suggested that, it was worth half a mile an hour, and that's one of the reasons why we were lacking that last little bit. I've had some other race engineers who know a lot about this say, no, it was nothing like that. Like, try 0.15, not 0.5. Like, this isn't a pole versus last place type deal. But it is, when added in with a bunch of other little special things that a team might do, part of the bigger picture of why some teams are really good and other teams routinely miss out on being highly competitive. So that to me was a really fun thing to learn as I kept asking folks over and over and over again. Stephen had it explained to me. Greg Fetchick, how you doing, Greg? Says, what's the deal with Scott McLaughlin's hip check of Joseph Newgarden coming out of the pits? That could have gone really bad. Are they suddenly the worst of enemies? No, not by any means. I mean, they're no longer buddies, but McLaughlin is a really nice and friendly guy. I know Joseph often comes off as a really nice and friendly guy. These are also two of the most hardcore knockdown, drag-out competitors you could imagine. So when Scott was a rookie, maybe even in his second year with the team, I definitely think, Greg, there was, and if that was how it was today, would be some kind of deference, a little bit of no after you, team veteran, champion, willpower, and or Joseph Newgarden. That is no longer the mindset that you will find within Scott McLaughlin. He views Joseph and Will and everybody else as his number one rivals to beat. Joseph does the same exact thing. So, yeah, the fact that these two are getting after each other, don't disagree that it could have gone badly, but neither one of them has any give within them for rivals or each other, and I love it. IndyCar Hawkeye fan says, does Pato know how beloved by the fans he is becoming? Says the roar when he took the lead on the white flag was massive. When Joseph took the lead back, the roar was considerably smaller. The folks love and wanted Pato to win. I can't disagree here. I mean, I heard it as well. Oh boy, folks exploded with excitement for Pato getting into the lead, and it looking like he might have been able to get the job done. But yeah, I mean, look, the guy's the most popular IndyCar driver we have, and it's not even close. Yeah, he knows how much he is loved. That he does. He's also getting to that stage in his career where he's come close championship-wise a couple times. I don't know if I ever really considered him like dead even to win a championship, but, you know, he's been thereabouts a couple times. He's been close at Indy now twice. He's at that place, which I mentioned to him on Sunday on pit lane after the race. After, 4 or 5 years? He's reached that same place Newgarden was at coming to Indy, right? Where it took him his 11th or 12th time to win, but he'd been coming there for a while, just relegating his mind to the fact that it probably wasn't going to happen. And I don't know if he let it eat at him anymore or as much as it once did, but it certainly wore on Joseph. You can see Pato's already there. So he knows he's loved, knows he is loved. He's just at that place. Pick whatever sport you love with someone who's an amazing player, whatever it is, and they have come close many times but fallen short. They just start crawling out of their skin. It doesn't matter how much you love them, how many kind things you say to them. They just do not feel like they can live life in a happy manner until they get that thing they crave more than anything. That's where Pato's at. Keith Lee, say thanks again for the coverage of the 500. Pleasure, brother. Says, do you think Pato could have done anything different in the closing laps to win the 500? I don't. This sharing or obvious statement alert, but it is all about timing, about where you are and when. And yeah, him leading into turn one on the final lap meant that he was going to finish second. It's just the way it is. Ask Marcus Ericsson last year, right? It is just a thing where whomever is in second, they're obviously in possession of an extremely good race car at the speedway. If you are leading into turn one on the final lap, mean, the only thing Pato could have done, which would have blown everyone's mind, and he would have been the most brilliant person ever, is to fall back slightly, let Joseph pass him, and chase Joseph into turn one, and use the draft going into 3 to get him in the same way that Joseph got our guy. The arrow and how everything works at Indy means that there are positions that you do not want to be in and positions you do want to be in. And Joseph being P2 behind Pato on the last lap, charging into turn one, unless Joseph made some kind of wacky mistake, which is not what he does. Pato is a sitting duck. Just an absolute sitting duck. That's what happened. Joseph pulled off an amazing pass around turn 3. I mean, we cannot understate how incredible that was. But even if he had decided to just take a wide entry, a late apex behind Pato, I think Pato could have done all the weaving he wanted coming out of 4, and Joseph still would have gotten him. So other than doing something that would have come really unnaturally to him, Keith, by lifting and letting Joseph by and chasing after him into 1, it's just the way that place works. Alan Stewart asking why Pato's lights were flashing on the steering wheel the entire last stint. I have no clue. Wasn't paying attention and missed this. Matt Stoll says, would like a little insight on engine issues. She says, Chevy in qualifying, Honda in the race. It's been a long time since we've seen that level of unreliability. Yeah, I don't disagree, Matt. I feel like what made things really stand out here for Honda in the race was the rapid succession of failures, right? We had Armstrong, then seemingly right after we had Catherine Legge, then a little farther down the road, but Felix Rosenqvist as well. And they certainly lost a number of motors during practice. Then the weekend prior, the Indy GP. I don't know what the issue was in the race for the 3 Hondas that blew. We saw that they all had the same characteristic of smoke pouring out of the exhausts. Yes, that tells you that something on the combustion-y side stopped doing good combustion-y things. But Honda said they are still looking into things when I asked yesterday. But yeah, clearly there were commonalities across all 3. I don't know exactly what they were, though. Chevy in qualifying, the big thing that stood out here, it's a suspicion of mine, and when I say suspicion, I don't mean in a bad way. It's meant to be a positive way. But when our guy, Ray Gosselin, Ryan Hunter-Reay's longtime race engineer, Indy 500 race winning engineer, former Ilmor Engineering employee, long before that, left Andretti Global, as we call them now, would have to say that Ray brought a huge thing to the team, or to Chevy and Ilmor, in customizing engine calibrations to its drivers. That brought big benefits right away. I would have to say, I'm guessing, Ray probably also said, one thing that Honda's done a lot of when I was, within their general family while engineering Hunter-Reay, is making a really big effort when it comes to qualifying and tuning and developing the motors at high boost. It's only done for that weekend, only done in qualifying, but it obviously sets the stage for what comes in the race. I'd never heard about Chevy going as crazy in tuning and development for the 1.5 bar high boost settings for qualifying. I'm not saying they never did. I'm just saying it's not a thing that I routinely heard year after year. Definitely heard that Honda was trying to win qualifying and win the race. My guess is Chevy said, you know what, this is another little area of performance we can improve upon, and they did. And they held on to that power in the lower boost setting for the race as well. And they had the reliability, and they had the fuel economy. They just won every facet of things, Matt, for sure. Samantha Smith-Gall, good to hear from you, pal. Look forward to seeing you, hopefully, at Portland with that crazy husband and your immense family. She says, I really felt like this was Alexander Rossi's year. Was so disappointed to watch the end of his race unravel. What was the key miss here? Was it taking that fuel stop, that last one, a little bit too soon? Did he lose momentum swapping the lead with Pato? Was he at risk of not making it across the finish line? And where the heck did Scott Dixon come from? Yeah, Dixie and the team there played a masterful stroke, doing some alternate strategy, and then due to the timing of some caution, or one caution in particular, having to jump onto the main strategy. But yeah, they did some big work there. I looked through what I could, Sam, trying to find out, and I know at least with how Rossi characterized things, he said he wouldn't have changed a thing. I know I'd had some folks asking, did he run out of fuel? Trying, on that last lap, getting across the finish line, where there's some issues there related to having to really stretch his fuel. I don't honestly know, so I apologize there. But yeah, they looked really strong the first half of the race. And as we'll talk about, I think, with a question about another driver in just a little bit, boy, the way things were going the first half of the race, Santino Ferrucci was going to win the Indy 500. I guess whether it's like the Daytona 500, where you watch what happens, but you kind of forget the first half, if not the first 3/4 or 7/8 or whatever. The driver and team that was looking awesome before it mattered, and then lost the balance a little bit. Something went slightly wrong and took them maybe not all the way out of contention, but just enough to not be that same powerful force they were in the opening half or whenever. That's what it looked like to me from Rossi's standpoint. If there was a deeper thing, again, him having to make insane fuel mileage and so on, then I apologize. That's me missing things. But when things were going well for him in the second half, it just looked like they'd lost a little bit of something. I know he and Pato were swapping the lead back and forth, and that was all kinds of fun. But yeah, I don't know if I looked at Rossi's car and thought he's the better of the two. And then Newgarden was just a menacing presence, even if he wasn't P1 or P2. He just had the look for a while, maybe the last 50 laps or so, where it was like, okay, it feels like they're about to spring one on us here, and they absolutely did. Kirk Lane says, Colton Herta provided any reason for why I was so quick to get out of the car. I don't know if I read that or found that, Kirk, but my interpretation was he thought the car was more damaged than what it was. And I thought he clipped the wall with his left front wheel corner, potentially bent something. I don't know if that actually happened. I don't know if his team saw and thought such a thing happened as well, but would also say that this is one of those classic things where we get all kinds of camera angles and replays, and it all makes perfect sense to us. The one person who has seen none of that is the person sitting in the car who just crashed and would have to assume he hopped out because he thought there's no reason to stay in. Eric O'Brien, what's your take on the incident between Dixon and Hunter Ray? Was it a red mist hip check, a mistake, or just honest hard racing? I haven't been able to watch any of the post-race interviews or do any reading, but felt Hunter Ray certainly took the high road. Yeah, I felt really dumb after the race. Granted, I feel dumb at all times, but I felt particularly dumb, Eric, because Dixie was the first driver that I interviewed after the race, and it totally fell out of my brain to ask. And I would have and should have, and just felt embarrassed that I forgot to. I can't tell you if he knew Hunter Ray was there. It's hard to speak to intent when you don't know things like that, but it did seem like he was trying to cover off anyone passing him on the inside at the exact time someone was trying to pass him on the inside. Do you know every single person that's in every single car based on looking through your mirrors? They don't. That's one thing definitely to understand. Not making excuses for Dixon. I'm just sharing some real insight. First of all, drivers tell you the mirrors on the cars are not fantastic. So perfect, crystal clear vision like we have watching a TV, that is not what the drivers have looking in their rearview mirrors. Information from spotters is really the most valuable stuff that they get. If it's if it were McLaughlin, for example, I think Dixon, looking in his rearview mirror, would have seen that yellow color heavily identified with Scott and Penske, known who it was, known what was going on, without a doubt. Pick another driver with a livery that is either full season and well known to Dixon, and or one that would just stand out as obvious. I can tell you, at least for me, between the two Brian Reinbold Cusick Motorsports cars of Hunter Ray and Connor Daly, from a head-on perspective, at a bit of a distance, I struggled to tell you what was what. There are a couple of cars, honestly, where I'm like, until it gets closer, it's one of about 5 in my mind of who this could be. Am I saying that had anything to do with Dixon? No, I'm just saying understand knowing exactly who it is behind you. Not always something drivers say they can tell. Hunter Ray in a one-off entry, I don't know how much time Dixon spent around him on track beforehand with Hunter Ray behind him to know who it was. Did he move? He clearly moved. Did he know there was a car there? I can't say because I don't know. I failed to ask him. Would he have known that was Hunter Ray? I don't know about that. I do think they have had a very clean career racing each other, as Hunter Ray said, as you mentioned, definitely took the high road, but I'd like to think it wasn't on purpose, because at that point in time, heading into turn 3 on that lap, it would have been for nothing, right? There was no last lap, I'm defending like mad and F you, and right? It was none of it was lapped like 100, barely past the halfway point. I realized Dixon's trying to go forward, make up a lot of positions, save fuel, do a bunch of really important things to affect the outcome of his race, but intentionally chucking a guy onto the grass at approximately the halfway point of the race, to me at least, makes no sense, which is why I want to believe it wasn't done on purpose. If it was low class and crazy dangerous. Those are not things we tend to associate with Dixon. But again, if it was intentional, that would really suck, because that's just not who he is reputationally. And it also doesn't fit for the time of the race where it happened. Lap 199, lap 200, not saying it would be right, but at least you go, okay, I understand why you're fighting so hard. Chris McCoy, glad you got to return to Indy this year. Thank you, brother. What happened to Will Power during the race? Long before the encounter with the wall, he was out of contention. Yeah, they were the epitome of the team that, after all the rains that were had, having to make chassis adjustments, aero adjustments, try and predict what kind of grip and balance was going to be there. They were the epitome of the team that got that wrong. Entry, I should say. But obviously Joseph and his team did super well. McLaughlin did super well. They faded a little bit, but Will was just the example of a team that started front row, super strong, and where a lot of others got it a little more right, they sank like a rock and fought and made improvements and made the car better, but they weren't like a fair number of the other ones who actually got their numbers right based on all the adjustments they had to make. The time of day we were starting, the ambient conditions, the fresh green track as well. They were the highest profile one, Chris, to swing and miss. Indy Nathan, good to see him many times at Indy, brother. Said, after Rasmussen's impressive run at Indy and knowing what he did on ovals and Indy NXT, it's a shame that he won't be racing any more ovals this year. Any chance Ed Carpenter reconsiders? Love the question. Here's the reality of things. This is among the most under-sponsored teams in the series. They are light on funding. Not saying they don't have good owners and backers and money isn't available to them, but they are not swimming in cash. Ed reconsidering this to put Christian in a third car, reconsidering is just another word for, is Ed considering spending hundreds upon hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to put Christian in an extra car for 6 races, or however many ovals we have left on the calendar? The answer is no. Because reconsidering, again, equates to, is Ed looking to spend gobs of money to make this happen? If a sponsor were to come to them and say, hi, we want to put this kid in ovals and ovals and ovals, then I think the answer would be yes, because the team could certainly use the money. Plus, based on what he did and going from 24th to 12th as a rook, not winning Rookie of the Year, which I wrote about in a little rant in my post-race column that went up on Racer today, which is just pure nonsense. But yeah, I'd love to see it without a doubt, Nathan. But yeah, ain't happening this year unless somebody wants to pay for it. Vincent 1701. What did Firestone Racing do to make the perfect tires for the Indy 500? What must they do to keep it up? Well, I mean, they made great tires. As I wrote about earlier in the month, they made harder left side tires. That was an issue that some teams had last year with the left sides wearing and going away sooner. This is all done expecting the hybrids, so we'll have to see how things change once we add about 100 and whatever pounds to the car with this energy recovery system. But also keep in mind IndyCar's aero settings, primarily allowing teams to go to higher downforce with the rear wing. That is what helped keep the cars, tires, and you name it, happier than we've seen at the Indy 500 for a super long time. Steve Brewer, say with the rumor, this is now fact, Steve sent this before it became confirmed, with the Stuart Haas NASCAR team selling off its charters and shuttering at the end of the season, do you see any possibility of SHR forming an IndyCar team? You say, with Tony's background, it seems logical for him to do it. What do you think? Yeah. There is nothing stopping them from being an IndyCar this year, the year before that, 10 years ago, 20 years. Well, granted, he joined, became part of that ownership, I think a decade ago. But there's been nothing stopping them from doing it. So, and they haven't. So with them saying the time and effort it takes to find sponsors and then try and run competitively in NASCAR just being something that's feeling like it's a little bit too much for them. If you think NASCAR is tough, welcome to IndyCar, y'all. Let me see who all has won races this year. I realized that Team Penske was disqualified at St. Petersburg, so the win definitely belongs to Aaron McLaren. Prior to that, though, we could say that Team Penske was the dominant team there. The next event wasn't a race, Thermal Club. That was Ganassi, Alex Palou. The next race, Long Beach, that was indeed Ganassi. The next race was indeed Penske. The race after that, it was indeed Ganassi. And the one after that was indeed Penske. So 3 teams have won this year. The third team that won was due to a disqualification, so I get that. Doesn't make it any less of a win, but I am saying for sure 2 teams have dominated the year. Okay, let's be super clear. McLaughlin and Newgarden were disqualified after St. Pete or from their St. Pete successes. a win and a third place there was had. They have rallied so heavily. This happened after Long Beach, okay? They effectively dropped to the bottom of the field. In the 3 races since their disqualifications, they have vaulted to 6th in the championship and 7th. I'm just saying, if Stewart-Haas Racing struggling to find everything they need, or just the ability through their own thoughts, R&D programs, you name it, to field cars that can beat run down the list of all the biggest competitors in Cup, please do not try IndyCar, because it's harder. It's way harder. And who knows who might win this weekend at Detroit. Christian Lundgaard could easily win, bring Rahal Letterman-Lanigan into victory lane. Who else? Our guy Rosie, Felix Rosenqvist, could do the same for Meyershank Racing. Good old Kirkwood or Colt Herta could win for Andretti, all that. Love to see it, genuinely, because I hate it when it's just 2 teams doing all the winning. But nothing we have seen this year suggests that anyone other than Ganassi or Penske is going to win the championship. So, just saying. Could Stewart-Haas Racing come here? Sure. Even though it would cost a lot less and all that kind of stuff, they would get mollywopped. So I don't think so. As I interpreted what they said in their press releases, or release, the word said in those things, Steve, they're tired. They're tired, feel like they're fighting an uphill battle, and they just decided, you know what, we don't see getting to the top anytime soon, so let's just cut our losses now. They could take all that money and come to IndyCar, and they are not going to come anywhere close to being competitive anytime soon. All right, y'all, we are a little bit past the 1 hour mark here. Let me look through some of the questions in the middle section if we want to go to overtime. John Sable said, did Race Control get the Dixon Hunter Ray call right? I don't think so. What about the Kalman Kirkwood calls? I realized it was pretty damning, but I would have left that one alone. So I would have effectively inverted things. I don't know if I would have given Dixon. Here's the thing. The only penalty being a drive-through, it's a race killer, depending on when it happens at Indy, right? Pit lane's so long, you go down at least a lap. Like, it's one thing if it happens early in the race, you can get it back, but anytime you're past the halfway point, it kills your day. Would I love to see IndyCar consider some sort of Formula One type option? Meaning, hey, you're coming in for a pit stop? Cool. You did a thing that we don't like and it's bad. If everything is a drive-through penalty, that doesn't always fit the crime. What I'd love to see IndyCar do, especially at tracks where you go, hell, a drive-through is the kiss of death, depending on when it happens. Love to see him say, that's 5 seconds. That's 10 seconds. And whether it is you sit for 5 or 10 or whatever before your team can do the stop, or they finish the stop and you sit there and idle for 5, however you want to do it. But I think we need to give ourselves some more options, because the Dixon Hunter Ray thing, do I think Dixon needed a drive-through? Again, you can't prove intent, right? Unless you got the guy out of the car and you're interviewing him. Tell me, see, what did you do? Why'd you do that, see? Like, yeah, right? Something was needed there, but I don't think a full drive-through was it. On the Callum Kirkwood thing, and Kirk hitting Callum from behind, Callum having to do some checkups, and it was just an awkward interaction. I feel like that could have been a non-call there, but who knows? Maybe you do the same thing. Maybe you do a 5-second hold on Kirk, and he's penalized, but it doesn't kill his race. Stuart Arith, why don't we close on you? Say, Marshall, saw your paddock tour, the Racer YouTube channel, and you mentioned a gentleman from Germany who volunteers in the pits. Would love to hear more of his story. you ever done an interview with him? Could you get a little more story about him? I find it fascinating. Wrote about my guy, Bernard Perkinseer, 15 plus years ago, Stuart, back in the old speed.com site. That's long gone. So we're at the end of the episode here. Why don't you do this? This is a perfect post-season, not a lot to talk about, let's spin some yarns type deals. So why don't you, if you remember, or Jerry, if you want to set a calendar reminder for, I don't know, October or something, let's revisit this, because Bernard's one of my favorite people and would love to tell the longer story about meeting our guy from Germany back in our very first Indy 500, mine 1997, and this amazing gent who's become part of the IndyCar family. All right, y'all, appreciate you, seriously do. Loved seeing so many of you, the immensely kind, loving things y'all said, did while there. Some of them for me, most of them for my wife, as they should be. Were just so not only greatly appreciated, but I was worn out the entire time, arrived exhausted, and I don't think it was until like Saturday morning of race weekend where I actually got okay sleep and felt human. It was just exhausted, but so I mention that because so many of y'all, whether members of the Prude listener group or just sweet folks, stopping me as I was stumbling around the place, offering words of encouragement, mentioning you listen to the podcast, to which most of the time I say thank you for your poor taste. It was just, y'all kept me going. You were the battery in my back. So thank you so much. And I will try and get my interview done with friend and Sky Formula One commentator, ex-F1 racer Karun Chanduk here out as well. It's great seeing him, catching up at the Speedway, and we captured a podcast talking about his first 500 and all the things that he saw and loved. So I'll speak to y'all here very soon.